Hey, creative souls, writers, word witches, thank you so much for being here. As always, I really appreciate it. In this video, I will be talking about the new moon in Scorpio and how it can influence and benefit and impact your writing practice. But first, again, thank you so much for being here, for your likes, your shares, subscribes, and for helping me get to my goal of 500 subscribers by the end of the year. So for those of you who don't know me, you can learn more about me. My name is Johnny. Go to my website, johnnymazzacco.com. You can go to my blog, writingthroughthebody.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, and you can find me on Substack where you can read some of my fiction. Some of it's behind a paywall, but I do have one story called Music Theory that when you become a subscriber, you are able to read the full story. You'll also be on my weekly newsletter, which includes a prompt and various thoughts on writing. And you'll also get my free 10 Ways to Banish writer's block. So I hope you'll go over there and check me out on Substack and become part of my community. All right, so let's look at the characteristics of a new moon in Scorpio first. And then I will break this down a little bit more and we'll talk about how it relates specifically to a writing practice. So, characteristics of a new moon in Scorpio. There's this powerful focus on transformation. That's really what Scorpio is all about. And it's about emotional depth and it's about shadow work. And so, this is why sometimes Scorpios can come across to some people as being kind of, I don't know, mysterious and withholding. But I have a Scorpio moon, and so I always relate well to Scorpios. One of my kids is a Scorpio. She just had her 40th birthday, which I still cannot believe. I have a child who's been on this earth for 40 years. Um, it was a lovely celebration. It was just like a big old love fest. And having a moon that's in Scorpio, having a child that's a Scorpio, I'm very well versed in scorpionic energy. And I really love it. And, I love diving deep into my emotions and just swimming around in my subconscious and my psyche and transforming things. And I think that's one reason why I'm a writer. And I also will link, if I can remember to do this when I post this video, link to another video I have on here called Shadow Work in Fiction Writing, because I think the two work really well hand in hand. And so, yeah, you can learn more about my thoughts on that over there. But as always, the new moon is ideal for setting intentions. And when we have one in Scorpio, those intentions are about rebirth, which requires a death of sorts, right? It's about personal renewal. So I view it very much like the winter before the spring. So it's when we go deep down inside, sometimes even into the underworld, which using that terminology can freak some people out depending on your spiritual leanings and your ideology. But it really just means diving deep, not into hell. It's not about the devil. It's not about evil darkness. It's about the darkness that lives inside us. And like it or not, this is true. We all have darkness inside us. And sure, it can mean darkness as in, not so positive tendencies because we're humans and we're not perfect. We're not what the hell am I trying to say? We're not robots. I can't access that other word I was looking for. Automatons. That was it. And so we do have that side to us, but the darkness in us is also our rich subconscious, which is where all of our deep, lovely creativity comes from, right? And so to me, a new moon in Scorpio is about going into that darkness within us, deep into our creativity, and coming out renewed some way. And I love that because I think that is what having a creative life does for us. It allows us to experience that death and rebirth, that personal renewal on a regular basis, which is what I think keeps us sane. And when we don't have a creative outlet, as I've talked about in other videos, that's when we can go kind of sideways. It's when things can kind of pop out of us that we didn't intend. We can behave in ways we don't like. And we can even, I think, make ourselves sick in a variety of ways. A new moon in Scorpio is also about deep connections. And so it encourages us to dive into our inner lives, to address the subconscious, like I was saying. And, this really can ultimately create positive shifts. It can also stir intense emotions and fears and power dynamics. And I'll talk about all of this a little bit more in detail in a minute. But as you might guess, this kind of energy is fabulous for writers, right? Because we get to go in there, like I said, and swim around in our own subconscious. And we do that all the time. And it's how we get to know our characters so that we can develop them deeply and make them feel truly human on the page. It's how we sort out story and plot puzzles that present themselves to us. And so, considering that this month is when NaNoWriMo used to happen, and some of us are still using the month for that, this is a really great new moon for us. All right, so let's break it down a little bit more. Key characteristics. So, Scorpio new moon, transformative and regenerative. So, I alluded to this before when I was talking about going deep and, finding that personal renewal. Well, it's a time for intentional change. So it's about clearing out the old to make way for the new and really focusing on psychological and emotional renewal. So, how might this relate to a writing practice? Well, it could be maybe you've started a new novel this month and you might be thinking, why would I make changes already? Well, it could be that you find yourself going in a direction that you sense isn't quite right. And this happens all the time when we first start a new novel. And, you know, I think you can always redirect your course. I think that's perfectly okay in the beginning and at any time. And, of course, we can kind of lean too far in that direction and constantly be changing things. And so we never make any progress. And so we have to find our own sweet spot with that, right? But writing a novel is not a linear process. It just doesn't work that way. There's no way that it can. And remember that this is about psychological and emotional renewal. So it could mean that you are sort of downshifting in a way so that you can slow down and really get into the psyche and heart of your characters, especially your protagonist. All right, so this is also about intense emotional depth. So Scorpio's watery nature can bring a lot of feelings to the surface. So I hope you will let yourself really sink into your character and feel what they feel. And this could be the full spectrum of emotions. It could also be a nostalgic feeling or a reflection about the past. So it might be that you're getting more information about a particular character's backstory. And, we may find that we're writing along and we find that there's a character that needs to be a little more present than we first knew or we first understood. And so it's perfectly fine to kind of downshift, like I said, give that character a little more attention. And I see it a little bit like raising kids. If you have more than one child, I had three, and you might find you're going along and you're giving everybody equal time, and then something pops up with one of them. They are presented with a certain struggle or a certain growth spurt that makes them behave weirdly. And so they need a little bit more attention than maybe the others. And so that's what you do. And you don't let the others go completely. You don't ignore them or abandon them. But that's the balance of writing a novel and managing and developing all these characters. Who needs the most attention right now while I'm satisfying these over here by still working on them? But my more intense focus is over here on this one. So you might find that happening at this point. Another facet of a new moon in Scorpio is that it's very introspective and intuitive. So, of course, Scorpio is that. And it's a great time to really take a deep look inward. for the purpose of discovery. So this could be discovery about yourself, maybe about your approach to or your perspective about yourself as a writer, or it could be that you're able to make some really meaningful discoveries about your characters. And intuition is also heightened right now, so be really open to listening to it and see where it takes you in your writing. Because again, there is this delicate dance that we fiction writers do between um, taking charge and doing what needs to be done, and then also listening to those voices that start saying, hey, pay attention to this. I need this, right? So it's a delicate balance. I call it a dance because we're always in this ebb and flow state. So let's see what else. Oh, yes. Scorpio new moon always. There is this potential for fear and power struggles. So power dynamics might show up, especially if they're not approached with self-awareness and vulnerability. So this could show up as a power struggle with one of your characters. And this can happen. You can have one thing in mind and then they go off and start doing something else. Or you find yourself stuck, and oftentimes it is because a certain character is needing a little extra something. And so my advice always is to just sit with them as if you're sitting with a friend or a child who needs something. Get in a quiet space, almost meditative space. Close your eyes if you need to and start asking them questions. Ask them, what is it you need? What do you want me to know? And if you're developing them, you might even ask them, like, what was your greatest or what is your greatest fear? What is your deepest wound? What has hurt you the most? Who has hurt you? And when we start asking our characters these questions, they will start showing us what they need. And then when we understand these things about them, their deepest wound, their greatest desire, their biggest fear, this starts to unfold their own story trajectory within the bigger story. And this is when the puzzle pieces start to fit together and we can start to see how to kind of, I don't know, slot them in, although there's more finesse to it than that. It's more like a weaving, I guess. But they really will tell us what their needs are. And when we listen to them, they're there to help us. And so I always see storytelling and developing characters as an equal exchange between me and my characters, because my job is to show up and tell their stories with integrity and honesty, and to take care of them in doing that. And their job is to feed me the information, the insights, the emotional depth that I need to do that. All right, so we are always works in progress, each one of us, and so are our stories and our characters. And so I hope you'll never be afraid or resistant to making changes along the way when they show up. Because writing a novel is not, I'm going to start at point A and end up at point Z. There are too many twists and turns and back switches that need to happen along the way. And it's just part of the very messy but truly magical process of writing fiction, right? Because when we are open to being open to that intuition, it's the wiser part of us saying, hey, it's time to refresh. It's time to shed a skin or shift a perspective or grow into the next incarnation, right? It's time to leave that plateau that you've gotten too comfy with and do something different. So lovely writers, I hope that you will seize this creative energy that Scorpio is offering and really let it take you down into the depths of your subconscious so you can locate your creative brilliance and get it onto the page. All right, as always, I send you mad writing mojo. Happy writing.